Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody who's joined early, and hope to see a few more people coming along. This presentation will be recorded and shared in the attendee hub. So if you're, strapped for time, you don't have to take screenshots. You can get the whole presentation. So, oops. So today we're talking about a grant that the UCEAP system decided to apply for a couple of years ago. We've titled it Study Abroad for All, and the grant is focused on making UCEAP study abroad accessible to underserved students. And we applied for the IDEAS grant. This is a list of the grant project team members, and I just want to give my personal shout out and gratitude for everybody for being willing to try this crazy journey and see what we learn. So thank you. In addition, there have been an incredible number of people who have supported this project. I've put them in this list by alphabetical by first name. If you do not see your name, I'm very, very sorry. We went through all of our emails to try and find everybody. It was not left off intentionally. Thank you all very much for joining us. And now I will hand it over to Shannon.
Thanks, Virginia. And yes, I second big thanks to everybody that contributed throughout the project and that will continue to contribute because we're about halfway through. So before we get into the details of our specific IDEAS grant proposal and our project work, we wanted to just share a bit about the IDEAS program and what it is, in case you haven't heard of it before or you're not too familiar with it. So IDEAS stands for Increase and Diversify Education Abroad for U.S. Students. It is a U.S. Department of State program, which means that the funds that we have received for this grant are federal funds. And while the money does come from the U.S. Department of State, the grant itself and the project work is managed by World Learning. So that is the organization that we work the most directly with on the day-to-day grant management items. Next slide. So this is an overview, a high-level overview of the application process, just so you can get an idea of what our process was before we even got into the project work. So in summer 2021, we began discussing potentially applying for the IDEAS grant. This wasn't really the first time we had talked about it. We had talked about the grant before, but summer 2021 is really when we took a deeper look at our organization's needs and how the IDEAS grant might help us meet those needs. So we had a lot of meetings and we collaborated with a lot of different units. Some of you may have been in some of those meetings early on. And eventually we were able to map out a rough outline of a potential project. So phase 1 applications opened mid-December 2021, and we had until February 20th to prepare and submit that phase 1 proposal. And then out of 169 applications that were submitted for phase 1, about half of them were selected as semifinalists and invited to move forward to the phase 2 application, including our proposal, of course. So we were notified of our selection on March 22nd, and from that point, we had about 2 months to prepare and complete our phase 2 application. Phase 2 was a lot more in depth. There are a lot more materials, and it was a much more detailed proposal than phase 1. So it was definitely a lot of work to pull everything together in time. But the hard work paid off, and we were officially notified that we were awarded the IDEAS grant on July 28th. So to get a little bit more into what the goals of the IDEAS grant are, the purpose of it. So the purpose of the IDEAS grant is to increase the number of U.S. students that are studying abroad, specifically undergraduate students. So the program does this by supporting institutions in either creating or expanding their capacity to administer study abroad programs. In addition to that, the project also supports the U.S. foreign policy goals. So each proposed project must align with at least one of the U.S. foreign policy goals. We won't get into all the details of what those are and how that works, but we will share more about our foreign policy goal alignment a little bit later in the presentation. So in addition to providing project funds and support related to the IDEAS grant, World Learning and IDEAS also works to collect, develop, and share best practices for carrying out this work. There are a ton of workshops and webinars that are hosted by World Learning and also other grantee institutions. And this is a really great opportunity for the institutions to learn from each other and share their knowledge. And it's just a really great extension beyond the grant of collaboration and information sharing. So UCEAP's project proposal, Study Abroad for All, making UCEAP accessible to underrepresented students, was one of 44 total awarded grants from that year's application cycle. So it went from 169 phase 1 applications down to 44 awarded grants. The maximum amount that can be requested as part of the IDEAS grant, at least for this cycle, was $35,000. And we requested and were awarded $28,476. So now that we covered what the IDEAS grant is and what the application process was like, we're on to the exciting stuff. Why you're all here, our project details. So starting with our primary goal, the primary goal of our project is to make studying abroad with UCEAP more accessible for underserved students. The focus of this work is on creating new content for our website and social channels, as well as updating existing content in order to increase student perceptions of trust, care, and connection with UCEAP, as well as preparation for study abroad. It was really important for us to intentionally involve students throughout the entire project. So that includes not only reaching out to students to learn more about their perceptions of study abroad, but actually including students in on that research and in the content development. So in terms of project work, we organize our project into 2 phases. So phase 1 is the research phase and phase 2 is our content development phase. So in phase 1, which we are in the process of wrapping up now, we had 3 in-person focus groups at UC Davis, UC Riverside, and UC Santa Barbara. We actually had 6 total, so we did 2 at each campus. And then we also had online usability testing of the UCEAP website. Since the usability testing was conducted virtually, we were able to recruit a lot more widely, and we had participants from 6 of the UC campuses. And then in phase 2 of the project, the findings from the phase 1 research will inform the content development that'll happen in that stage. So this work will be done by the marketing team in collaboration with the grant-funded student employees that are going to be hired to work with them. All right, so just again, a high-level overview of our timeline. We actually began project work on September 1st, 2022. And as you can see here, we're wrapping up phase 1 now. So we completed the focus groups in March, we completed the usability testing in June, and we are currently working on analyzing all of that amazing data and preparing a final report, final research report, which we're hoping to have ready in October. Then we'll move on to phase 2. Again, as you can see, we're already slowly starting up phase 2, working on hiring those marketing student employees. And once they are fully onboarded and that report is finished, then really the second half of the project will be really focused on that content development. And then August 2024 is our last month of project work. Once we wrap that up, we'll submit our final reports to World Learning, and the IDEAS project itself will officially be completed. And then on to the foreign policy goal alignment. So the foreign policy goal that we aligned our project with was economic development and entrepreneurship. So this decision was based off of numerous studies that highlight the outcomes of study abroad on students' academic and professional careers. So some of the research we highlighted in our proposal includes evidence that study abroad participation is associated with increased graduation rates and higher GPAs. And these results are true for all students, but the impact is greater for underrepresented students. Study abroad has also been linked to a greater likelihood of graduate degree attainment for underrepresented students. And in addition to that, there is a correlation of increased early career earnings for those in the social sciences, which is a field of study in which Latinx students and other students of color are overrepresented at the UC. Prior studies have also acknowledged the importance of tangible career readiness skills and experiences for students of color. And this research further supports the importance of providing work experiences for students that are involved in this grant, as well as including the research participants in the research process in order to expose them to all the processes involved in conducting research. So we're hoping to not only receive information from students and learn from them, but also to provide them with experience and knowledge about how research is conducted. Next slide. We also wanted to share a bit about the proposal feedback that we received throughout the proposal phase. So it's one thing we really appreciated throughout the proposal process is that World Learning shared feedback with us from the reviewers. You see the first quote at the top here, this proposal presented a unique approach to helping improve study abroad opportunities, not just for one institution, but an entire state. We did focus on highlighting the unique opportunity we had as a system-wide office to reach students across the UC system. Since we aren't located on a single campus, it can be a challenge sometimes to effectively explain how we work and what we do. So we were really happy to read that they valued our unique role, and they also appreciated the opportunity to have the wide reach with a large number of students. And then the second quote we selected was, it was admirable that it included students in the process of assessment to remove barriers for students. As mentioned a couple times earlier, it's really important for us that we included students in all aspects of the project work. And we were really thrilled that we not only effectively communicated that concept, but that it was equally appreciated by the reviewers. So that's just some of the highlights that we wanted to share with you all from research. And now I will pass that off to Nina.
Hi, Yana here. I'm going to talk about some of the preliminary results from our phase 1 efforts so far. So for our focus groups, we intentionally recruited students who have not studied abroad, particularly if they currently have no plans to study abroad. And then in our outreach, we also identified student groups who have been historically underrepresented or underserved by our programming. And that included transfer students, Latinx students, and first-generation college students. So like Shannon mentioned, we ended up running 6 in-person focus groups, and there were 27 participants total. A quarter of them were transfer students, 85% identified as Latinx, 93% identified as first-gen college students, and then there was about an even mix of non-STEM and STEM students. Just want to say also that our campus partners are so important in helping us reach out to students to participate in this part of the project, so thank you so much. We had a few research questions that guided our focus group discussion and our protocol, sort of. We wanted to know what are our students' perceptions of study abroad, what kinds of study abroad communication would increase their interest in study abroad, and then finally, what influences their study abroad perceptions and their communication preferences. And here I want to give a really big thank you to Eileen Mejia, who is our research student worker. We hired Eileen for this specific project so that we could have a student voice in this phase. A few of our team members, including myself, identify as first-gen students, but a whole generation or more ago, and the college experience is different now. So we want to include an insider perspective, a subject matter expert, someone who is currently a student to read and interpret the data with us. So we're going to dive into some of the preliminary themes to give a taste of what our focus group students were especially tuned into. A quick word about how our preliminary themes are structured in the presentation. Since our focus groups students, they haven't studied abroad, and in many cases, they don't plan to. Their thoughts about study abroad are really shaped by their college goals and their experiences because that's what they're familiar with. So in this analysis, we're presenting our themes as sort of a comparison between how this theme has been experienced in college so far, and then how students hope this theme would play out in study abroad. So it's just a way to frame the themes that adds context about why students express these thoughts or desires about study abroad in the way that they do. So for a lot of our focus group students, families are a big influence on how acceptable or feasible it is to incorporate study abroad into the college experience. Students have said how important accessible communication is for their family. So for some of them, their family hadn't had many meaningful opportunities to connect with the UC. So in that first quote, this participant said, easily accessible part is the that I think is the most is very important, because I remember when I was in high school, a community college counselor came to talk about options for your kid, about UCs, CSUs, and community colleges and resources like that. That woman is the only time my parents had ever been exposed to accessible UC information. So this student remembered a college counselor coming to a high school presentation to parents, and that's the only exposure their parents had to accessible UC information. And that experience affected their expectations and hopes for study abroad communication. So when we're talking about study abroad, what this person said that they hope the communication would be accessible to their parents, maybe even physical mailers to the home. Communication that promotes awareness, but also can legitimize and normalize study abroad as a part of the college experience. A lot of the students talked about how they thought studying abroad and the research that goes into studying abroad feels overwhelming. They want the information to be digestible for their families, as well as for themselves, for their own knowledge, but also to be able to interpret and relay that information to their families. So for our students, financial information is top of mind for them and their families. Like the second quote in the accessible information as imagined for study abroad, a student said something easily digestible. Anybody could read and be like, oh, okay, this is how much I'm going to be paying. These are the resources. And then another student saying, like the cost of attendance sheet thing, where it kind of summarizes that you're paying this much for housing, this much for tuition. So, when they're ready to look into study abroad, they're expecting something like the cost of attendance sheet, like something that they already know and are familiar with. Knowing that there's transparent and specific information about study abroad costs and financial aid packaging is important to this group. Students not only want to know, that financial aid travels with them, they want to know how much aid travels with them and then how to get that information really easily. Our second theme is about social mobility. So a lot of our focus group students are getting their degree for the very utilitarian purpose of improving their family's social situation. There is a lot of language referencing mobility, moving up, moving forward, uplift. So in this quote, the student says, the study abroad experience is for people who view college as a learning experience rather than a tool to move up. I value my degree very much because I know it's going to be the key that eventually opens doors for me to be able to take care of my family. So throughout our focus group conversations, students are saying that college is a tool for mobility for their family to be in a better situation. On the other hand, a lot of concerns about study abroad uses language in the opposite direction, setting me back, falling behind. So what students want to know and want to hear is how relevant study abroad is to their college goals. Can they be assured that their classes will be counted for their degree or major requirements? How to study abroad move them forward in their career? So this person says, something that throws me ahead of my peers when it comes to pursuing the career I want, rather than setting me back at school. That would be my interest. They also want to know if study abroad, what's the utility of it when they graduate. So the last student on this page says, what has study abroad taught them that they can use or that they're currently using in a career? How has that helped them after graduation? So what's the utility of study abroad? And then another theme of the focus groups also is support. So financial, academic support, of course, but also emotional support. It's really important to note that to our participants, support on campus is often tied to individuals like specific advisors, program coordinators, directors. So this program, this focus group participant in the first quote says, I feel like I have, and then this person names the name of the support person on campus. I have this person to go to if I need help with anything like resources. Who would I have over there? I don't know the resources part. I don't know if I would have support over there. So, she wanted to know who would be that person abroad for her. And that's emphasized in the second quote when another student talked about what they want to see on study abroad, a holistic study, a holistic support system. and they used the word uproot. So they said, I would need to see a more holistic support system. Uprooting and going abroad in the middle of your academic career is a lot. You get so used to here, and I think that change would be a lot. So the word uproot essentially is to be plucked from their support system. And they're using it to describe a sense of disruption that study abroad seems to cause in the college experience. So to minimize that feeling of disruption, they want to know who their people would be, who would offer support for that whole person while they're abroad. If they're having challenges abroad, who can they talk to? So in that last quote, knowing that I would still have support, someone I can talk to express that I'm not having a good time. Can I talk to someone about that? And then as a last initial theme that we're just going to share in this presentation from the focus groups, peer groups really influence students' sense of belonging on campus and how they envision the study abroad experience. So in that first quote, the student says, I have a couple of friends who are white and they come from families that have a lot of money. It's just the way they talk about life is so much different than me, where it's like, oh, I'm going to a family's cabin in Tahoe. Everyone has a cabin in Tahoe. In Southern California, it's all about terrenos. In Ensenada or whatever, it's just a completely different thing that I can't connect with. So for some of the students that are in focus groups, their interactions with students in their college network can already produce like a sense of alienation because their social activities, the norms, and even status signifiers like having a cabin in Tahoe or terrenos, those signifiers are so different. These peers are the peers that the students associate with people who study abroad. And what our focus group participants are saying is that they feel a lack of connection with these peers. So when they're imagining studying abroad as an accessible experience, like you see in that second quote, finding a relatable experience. When you're abroad, if you would find a network of people who can be relatable to you, they could spend time with and go over the experiences that you're going through, I think that would make a more safer, relatable space when you're studying abroad. They're looking for relatability. They're trying to seek safety among other students who are relatable to them. So this is important because students often become curious about an activity or an organization. This is what we found, when we're interviewing students or doing focus groups. They're curious about an activity because of the people involved in it, who they know in real life or who they see on social media. The people share, or at least seem to share, a similar background, similar values, or similar academic or career goals with them. So they're able to see themselves studying abroad. So students need to see or hear from students who feel like them. So a lot of these themes have been addressed by our colleagues across the system during this conference in one way or another, but it helps to hear from students in their own words. And the students also had some really great suggestions for awareness outreach and the kinds of website or informational material that they want to see. So just consider this as kind of a teaser for a report later that we'll share more widely. And then with that, I'm going to move to the usability test part of phase one. So we conducted 18 one-on-one virtual sessions with UC students to test our UCEAP website. And we test the usability test was on how easily it is to find programs and to navigate the website to find specific information. So we have a wider campus representation, as Shannon talked about earlier, and we have a greater share of third and fourth year students compared to the focus groups. And again, this is all thanks to our campus study abroad office partners for getting the word out about this project to help us recruit. So our usability test research questions were, what existing UCEAP website or navigation features enhance the user experience? And then also what website or navigation features need to be developed or improved to promote the user experience? And just quickly, these are some high-level insights that we're noticing in the usability test results. Students like, and they're finding fewer issues with our program search filter layout and choices. When they conduct a search on the program search and they come up with the results, they really like the program card layout and the content. They like where the menus are located. They really like that that student experience content is integrated throughout the website and they are encountering it in many different places. And then for suggestions, students said that they would like to see more visible tools of program cost comparison. So they were able to find the program costs for each of these programs, but they just want to see that more upfront or a way for them to filter for programs that way. They want more intuitive program search filter behaviors when selections change on the program search. They want more consistent styles or visual cues indicating interactivity. So when an element is interactive, they want to be able to spot that right away and know that that's interactive. They want to see consistent styles that show important information. And they want to also see links to resources that are integrated within content that's related to that link. They see some of that, but they just want to see more of it. And they also want menu titles that make sense to them. So we'll have more comprehensive results in our later report to share. And now I'm just going to hand it back to Shannon.
Thanks, Dana. So just to wrap up, we have a couple of final slides. As I mentioned earlier, these are our next steps. We being UCEAP Research will continue to analyze the data. We're preparing that final report. And then we'll move into phase 2, where marketing will work with the 3 student employees on content development. And we didn't want to bore you with including an actual budget, but we did want to share some highlights of how the funds have allowed us to complete the project work. So some of the main things that the funding provided was travel for the focus groups. We went to 2 campuses that the team had to travel to, and so that paid for our transportation, our meals, hotels, all of that. So that was a really great opportunity for our team. Also, a really interesting benefit that was unexpected. We didn't originally budget for this owl device that you see here, but we were able to borrow one from an on-campus unit, and we realized that we could rearrange the funds that we were originally allocated for renting equipment on all the campuses. And so we requested that change for World Learning. They said that's completely fine, and they thought that that made sense and it was a great idea. So the research team actually now has one of these owls, which is a 360 camera and microphone. So we set it up in the middle of the room, and it zooms in on who is ever speaking, but also maintains a view of the entire room as well. So it's been a really great tool for us in our focus groups. We also were able to provide incentives for all of our participants and also salaries for all of the employees that have been working with us. All of that came from the grant funds. And we also were able to purchase usability testing software. Again, this is just a tool that helps us better carry out our research, and something that we probably wouldn't have been able to purchase otherwise. So we included this slide. Like Virginia mentioned earlier, the slides are already uploaded. So we just have this here for you to look at on your own time. If you're interested in applying for your own grant in general or an ideas grant, you're free to email that email you see on the screen or any of us. And then next slides. We also included some World Learning resources. These are for the Ideas grant specifically. Ideas is really great about providing a ton of support. If you have never applied for a grant before, this is a great grant to apply for. They really hold your hand throughout the process. So there are some resources there you can check out.
And now we would just like to answer any questions that you might have, and find out if you want to know anything about either our grant or anything about what we've talked about here today. You can either unmute yourself. I think our session host will make sure that you can unmute, or you can type it into the chat and we'll be watching over there as well. I'm curious if we have anybody else here on this call that has thought about applying for this grant or might be curious about the process. I will let you know that one of the things that I did years ago when I first encountered World Learning was to volunteer to review grants. I did that for 2 years. It was fascinating to be on the reviewer side, and it was really insightful to see what got selected and why. I was much like our internship awards, was all of the grants are reviewed by teams of people. You get the chance to review them individually and rank them, and then you join groups and to talk about them. So that was pretty, again, it was insightful. I really wanted us to apply for this grant. And so that was sort of the method that I took to figure out what worked. Well, if there are no questions, I hope you all have a great rest of your conference. Please feel free to download this presentation. And as always, we have our ending slide. Thank you for attending. Please complete the conference survey, which will be sent to you by email later. And have a great day.